And what I always say, and I say this to my kids too, if you live alone one day, it won't matter at all how many of these things you do. It'll be you. You can have your house be messy. You can, eat cereal for dinner. But the fact that we live in communities, we live in houses with other people, we create families, we live in towns. That's, for me, what the book is about, really. How do you be a person in a community in small and big ways?
Hello, listeners. Today on the Parent Compass at the Smart Social Podcast, we are excited to welcome fellow author, Catherine Newman, author of How to Be a Person. We're going to be talking to her today so that hopefully by the end of this, we will all know how to be people and our kids will know how to be better people. We are so excited to welcome you, Catherine. Thank you for joining us. Can you tell us, Catherine, a little bit about your background and who you are so that our listeners get to know you?
Yeah, I am a writer. I have written a bunch of different kinds of books and different kinds of things. Like I wrote a novel for kids. I wrote a couple memoirs about parenting. I wrote a craft book for kids, which I wrote with my friend Nicole. So I've done a lot of different kinds of writing. I write recipes, and I'm a recovering academic. I got a PhD and bailed out of academia. So every day am feeling lucky about that.
That's great. And congratulations. And your newest book is How to Be a Person. So I just want to tell our listeners how we originally found you, Catherine. It turns out we share a distribution publishing house in Workman Publishing. But even more than that, Jenn and I received a text about a month ago from a friend who knew that we were authors of the Parent Compass. And the text came with a picture. And I don't know if our listeners can see it, but it was a photo that says, your kid doesn't need to be the best. And this is an article written by Catherine Newman for Parents Magazine. And we quickly looked it up and read your article, which I just want to read the very beginning because this completely resonates with so much of what we're talking about in the Parent Compass. So we found you as a fellow mom and a fellow writer that was just shouting out lots of the same kinds of messages that we're trying to get across in our book. So next time we'll have to have you interview us for that next article. But anyway, you start this article by saying it starts early and it sticks around. The drumbeat of worry when your baby isn't the 99th percentile, when your child quits soccer or violin, when your teenager brings home B's or even C's. Most kids are average. That's what average means. So why do we worry so much when it's our kids? And then you go on to this lovely, meaty, wonderful article that points out so many important aspects that we're trying to kind of grow and how to be better parents in the Parent Compass. So we found you through that, and then we're pleasantly surprised to see this wonderful new book that resonated with us in a totally different way because we speak to, middle school audience parents as well. And that seems to be, a little bit about who you're speaking to here. Although, anyway, so that's our background to how we found you. So thank you for this. And we'd love to really know maybe from you what prompted you to create this wonderful book.
Okay. It's funny. I hadn't made this connection before actually until you read that intro to that piece. And also I've been reading your book, so I'm thinking in slightly different terms maybe. But I was thinking a little bit about this tendency we have to kind of, as parents, to overvalue this imaginary future our kids have, to value that over the actual present they're in now, and that we have these actual relationships that they are dependent on us, we care for them, we love them, we enjoy their company, these complicated, nuanced relationships. And I worry, and I know you worry about it too, because I feel like it's so much what your book's about too. I worry so much about just cashing it all in for some just imaginary future where get into Ivy League schools or whatever it even is, where in fact, it's just this. It's just our relationships with them now and the people they're always becoming. There's not some, like future abstraction that's your kid. It's just this person. So That's a long introduction to this book, and not even a very good one, because this book, a lot of people talk to me about this book with relation to independence. So what this book is a ton of different skills. It's like everything from roasting a chicken and sweeping the floor to writing a thank you note and using a Swiss Army knife. It's like a million skills loosely clumped in chapters. And I think it's really tempting. And in fact, the back cover shows this kid like flying out of a helicopter, to talk about it as a book about independence. And that makes sense to me. And I think that there's a lot of independence in the book, that the idea is like, these are capable people. Let's let them be capable, and let's make sure they turn into capable housemates, partners and responsible citizens. But I also think it's a book that's kind of confusingly about interdependence, that it's a book about relationships in this weird kind of there's like a subcurrent, a sub-theme of the book, which is that we all are interdependent. And what I always say, and I say this to my kids too, if you live alone one day, it won't matter at all how many of these things you do. It'll be you. You can have your house be messy. You can, eat cereal for dinner. But the fact that we live in communities, we live in houses with other people, we create families, we live in towns. That's, for me, what the book is about, really. How do you be a person in a community, and in small and big ways? So there's a really long answer.
I love that. I read your book last night to my kids as I was putting them to sleep. And first of all, obviously I couldn't read the whole thing. Mine are 7 and 4, so I had to get to bed. But they were truly bummed out when I had to stop. They really found it so interesting. And they're in this stage right now where I love what you said, that it is tempting to look at it as independence, which I think it is, but that community aspect I could see even from the very beginning. You talk about when you go visit an older individual, here are things that you can do for them. Here are ideas. And I felt like you're giving people tools for their toolkit to understand how do I care for my grandmother? And they were so excited to read, we're seeing their grandparents on Saturday. Let's paint her nails, because that was one of the suggestions that you gave. And I love that, because they are in this stage where, they like going and handing out flyers to neighbors to do chores, but they just don't know what else they can do. So those ideas, I think, are so helpful for that age group.
Well, and I would add that this book that appears to be sort of written in almost like comic strips, like a very animated, youthful, trust me, I learned a few things, and I know your audience is like middle school, 7 to 12-year-old, but I was laughing. I'm like, that's good for me to add to roasting that chicken. And I have a 20 and 22-year-old who are out living on their own, and I'm a little bit disappointed that I didn't help teach them some of these things, although my 20-year-old in college does call me once a week with laundry questions, and it is a way to at least have him call me. But I may make a photo of that page so he can tack it up and do that. But I really think this book does have a deeper meaning than just sort of a whimsical how-to guide. And I love your analysis, your deeper analysis of it, because I think we as parents do want to raise kids that are self-reliant and that can be more independent and learn some of these things for themselves. And we have such a tendency to hover at every age, which is what we're trying to teach in the Parent Compass, to pull back from that. So thank you for this guide, which also speaks to such a diverse audience. Your colorful animations had, kids of every ethnicity and a kid in a wheelchair, and just, it was so open and thoughtful the way that you and your illustrator shared the information, that it felt accessible, and we appreciate that as readers and as your audience.
I'm so glad. Debbie Fong, who's our illustrator, who's like the most incredible artist in person, she's got that the vibe was loving and inclusive, that we didn't want it to be a book. Like, I love teenagers. That's probably my favorite age group. So we didn't want it to be like scoldy or anything other than like sort of an invitation to learn stuff. And the argument in the book is like, learn stuff because you'll be happier if you can contribute. And so Debbie, I feel like just really got that. And I also feel I just reminded myself of something else, which is pandemic specific, but that I think it's a moment where kids, they know there's a crisis. Depending on the household they're in, they know there are multiple crises unfolding right now in the country and the world. And giving them actual concrete ways to be helpful, I think is a total gift. I think they are eager to feel like they're part of things in a meaningful way, rather. Even if it seems like what they want to do is like scroll through TikTok all day, I don't really think they want to. I think they want to be meaningful parts of the family. You know, my daughter, I mean, she's 17. It's not like she's a prodigy, but she's doing tons of get out the vote stuff for the election. You know, I think it's a moment. She brought a bunch of toys to our little neighbors, you know, at the beginning of the pandemic. And they want to be part of our lives in this important kind of frightening moment. So I think it's helpful for them to know how to do stuff.
So one of the questions I have for you actually does have to do with the pandemic. Do you have advice for either parents or, you know, the kids that will be reading your book of how to be a person during the pandemic?
Yeah, I know. I'm very conscious of being a 7 and a 4-year-old different kind of person and a 17-year-old. I mean, I have different thoughts about it. Partly, I feel like, you know, parents and mothers in particular have been put in a slightly impossible, untenable situation right now. That's a different issue, perhaps. But I do think, I mean, just what I was saying, I do think kids, I think it's not just that we're teaching them skills for this imaginary future. I think part of it's that we, if they're authentically helpful now, if we can actually take the time, and it's hard because it's more time up front. We know that teaching your kids, like cooking with them. Oh my God, at the beginning, you're like, okay, this is going to take 2 hours longer than it otherwise would, but it's an investment. It's like any investment and it comes back, you know, you reap the rewards of it. So I think about, you know, using some of this time to teach kids authentic skills, both so that they're doing meaningful things. And there's neuroscience that supports this, that when you do useful stuff with your hands, you know, not on a keyboard, when you make food or garden or chop wood or build a fire, you release dopamine, you know, the reward chemical. And that's true for adults and kids. So that's my plug for the like mental health benefits of actually being useful. But also crazily, if you actually teach them this stuff, you can say to a kid, even a kid younger than you might imagine, I am having the craziest day. Can you make dinner tonight? And dinner can be, you know, spaghetti and jarred red sauce. But what a gift for everyone. Like, you have this proud kid, you actually get off your Zoom thing and dinner's made. Like, it's very win-win. But that said, if you can't shepherd your kid through an additional thing, which is teaching them a bunch of stuff right now, no pressure.
I think those comments are so great, and they resonate with us personally when COVID struck. We had a 22-year-old, a 20-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 13-year-old, all 6 of us for 5 months. And the cleaning got insane. And, you know, so a friend told me about Power Hour that they do on Saturday nights. For an hour, she set a timer on her clock, and everyone's given buckets and sponges and some instruction. And all 6 of us for that Power Hour after dinner on Saturday night had tasks. And I wish I had your book to show them easily how to clean a toilet, because yes, I had to kind of teach that. And this morning before we interviewed you, I showed the book to my 14-year-old who thought maybe she had aged out of some of this content. And I leafed through it and I said, what would you like to learn? She goes, oh, I know how to make a bed. I know how to clean a toilet. You know, I know. And I just was kind of laughing because, again, those skills weren't necessarily, I mean, I was at fault for enabling, you know, doing a lot of those things for our kids. And now they're learning to be more self-sufficient. And your book is a perfect companion, you know, kind of to the task-oriented thing. And it does carry this deeper meaning of volunteerism and giving of your time. And I will add, it is written with such humor and such accessibility. I had to actually print out this, which I don't know if it reads backwards or not, how to deal with halfway dirty clothing. We call that the medium clothes in our house. So I love that you've named it, you know, those clothes you haven't worn long enough to last the whole day. Are they dirty? Are they not? And then you even encourage someone that when they're doing a load of dirty to go around and collect up the mediums from others to let them know, or the halfway dirty clothing. And you write in vocabulary about, you know, put a bloop of this or a blop of that on your food, and, you know, wad up your folded fitted sheet. That's okay. I mean, there was so many wonderful light, you know, it was less preachy. You have a great tone in the book. And I really think it's going to do well and be just so well received, you know, as a helpful guide.
Thank you so much.
I have one last question for you. Was there a tip in here that was the most fun for you to write?
I don't know if it was the most fun to write, but it's my favorite illustration, and it was the most comical in my household, and that's how to apologize. I don't know if you can see this, but this kid has broken his mom's glass manatee, and he's apologizing in a heartfelt way. And first of all, I was so in love with Debbie for this illustration, because first she did the illustration without the manatee, and I was like, do me a solid and put the manatee in it. And she did. And I'm just like madly in love with her. But how to apologize for me is like the heart of the book in this super weird way, because it's a skill like any other skill. Like, you're not born knowing how to apologize. You probably see people do it. People, maybe you watch people apologize to each other. People maybe apologize to you. But I think it's worth thinking of it as a teachable skill, that there's actually ways to think about it, or, you know, how do you think about empathy, or what is an apology even? And I had to laugh because my daughter and I don't know what to make of the gender split, because I mostly don't tend to think in gender splits, but there is a gender split in my household around apologizing. My daughter and I are excellent, compassionate, empathetic apologizers. We're like, wow, that must have really hurt you. Gosh, now I'm thinking about it, I'm so sorry. And both my husband and son push an apology out at you like it's an old person on an iceberg being sent to their death, you know, and it's like, here it is, you know, just like, take it. It's this frozen thing that like comes your way, and that's all they have for you. And both of them, when they were copy editing the book for me, everyone in my family copy edited the book and gave me a million notes. They're the best. Both my husband and son put comedic post-its on the how to apologize page that said WTF. Both of them, which I just love. But anyway, that was probably the most fun, all in all, to work on.
Katherine, before we wrap up, I think what I would say is in reaching out to you to do this interview, I think, you know, the article from Parents Magazine obviously kind of introduced us to you and the commonalities that we share in your thought process in that article. But I'm so pleasantly surprised at how connected our two books really are. The Parent Compass began as an etiquette book to teach parents the proper behavior of raising tweens and teens. We actually had a different title. As you know, as an author, things change. And I know that you've written a lot about etiquette for Martha Stewart and through lots of big people as an etiquette expert. And so we were hoping to have, we don't know if the Parent Compass will be as easily and warmly received as the nice illustrative version that you do in a friendly manner, because our book forces parents to really take hard looks at themselves and the mistakes that we've made, and maybe the patterns that we need to break in parenting tweens and teens. But if we were to rewrite the Parent Compass or do a different version, you know, we may need to partner with you to make it, you know, to really break things down in a friendlier way, kind of teach parents, you know, to keep practicing this good behavior, and to have us stop being the ones to, you know, force all these things, to put a little time in, like you said, and invest in teaching some of these life skills, and then let the kids practice them. If you're going to teach them, let them do them. Now let them.
It definitely has that sort of undercurrent that I love, that is, you know, some of my favorite people like Jess Leahy or Julie Lithcott-Haynes, like the let them fail, which I really love. And I have a slightly, I love the, like, leave them to it. And if they make a mistake and need your help, that's fine. You know, like, I'm not a that's your thing, because I expect a ton of help in my family and get it all the time. And I have lots of help to offer back. And I always assume I'm raising kids who are going to end up in helpful, supportive environments. You know what I mean? Like, my goal is not to raise a kid who can't ask for help or who has to do everything on their own. Like, we don't want kids to find themselves stranded ever. You know what I mean? Like, my 20-year-old right now is living with 5 other 20-year-olds, and they're like this most loving, supportive kids. And I just love that. They're so helpful. It's not like anyone's just, you know, you don't want to raise a kid who has to like do everything for themselves one day. And at the same time, you want kids to be able to deal with a little adversity and to figure out how to problem solve, and give them just like a moment's space to do that before you jump in constantly. And I feel like your book is so that of like, I like thinking about it as etiquette for parents, but where it's like, hey, take a deep breath, like, you know, just to put a little time in between you and problem solving to see kind of how your kid's gonna deal. I think that's really important. And then if they come to you, you're there, you know, like, we're not going anywhere.
Katherine, where can people find your wonderful book, Be a Person?
The book is, I think, kind of everywhere online, and hopefully, if, you know, as brick and mortar bookstores open, it's in those. And it's in the library too. I mean, I know I'm supposed to encourage everyone to buy it. And I'm really Googleable. If you put in my name, it's Catherine with a C. I have a website, and I'm on Instagram where it's mostly pictures of my cats and political, like, you know, screes, but I hope people come and find.
Well, we are so grateful to have had you as a guest. We're big fans. Hopefully we're new friends, new fellow authors. And
it's nice to talk to you guys.
Yeah, and we shared. So thank you for being a part of the Parent Compass on Smart Social. Everybody go out and get yourself or get your kids a copy of How to Be a Person. This will teach you and your kids. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks, you guys.
Bye.